What's up, my friends? Welcome to a news style video. In this one, I got through my sources, the Sergeant Major of the Army's Army Combat Fitness Test, and we're gonna take a look at it. I'm just kidding, actually, he posted it on Twitter, so we're just gonna look at it from there. Now, I'm not going to bother you with what the ACFT is and explaining it or anything like that. I've got several videos I've done before, so down in the description box I've got a link to a video that kind of gives a description of what the ACFT is, breaks it down for you, as well as gives you some kind of timelines as far as when it's taken effect. So let's just kind of dive into the Sergeant Major of the Army's ACFT scores. I'd love to see down in the comments, maybe try to play a little game, no cheating and skipping into later in the video. What do you think the Sergeant Major of the Army scored as a whole? Keep in mind, max for 6 events, 100 points for each event is 600. So the max someone can score is 600. So what do you think the Sergeant Major of the Army scored? Comment down below and then stick around for the video to see how close you were. Also, a key thing to note, even though there is 3 different tiers to the ACFT, that just really determines the minimum standard as far as what is considered passing, but the scoring is still essentially the same, just that scoring may be lower for the lower tier and then higher for the heavy tier, but the maximum is still the same across the board, no matter if you're male, female, age of 18 or 50. So that kind of plays into this, especially since, the Sergeant Major of the Army is a male and is 51 years old as of taking this ACFT, and so he must score the same kind of standards as a female who is 18 or a male who is 20, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all neutral. So let's kind of check out this first event and how he scored. So the first event that you conduct is the repetition maximum deadlift, where you have to lift this weight for 3 repetitions, and whichever of the 2 attempts that you get is the heaviest is the one that they count. So it looks like from this chart, his first attempt was 280 pounds. So he did the 280 pounds and then I guess realized he can do a little bit more. So he went ahead and did another attempt and did 300 pounds to score 90 points in this event. The next event he would have conducted was the standing power throw. This is where you have a 5-pound medicine ball and they have to toss it over their head for distance, and they get a practice throw and then 2 record throws, and whichever of those 2 record throws is the furthest is the one they count, and they just measure it in meters. So from this scorecard, looks like the first one went 9.5 meters and the second attempt went 9.7 meters, so a little bit farther on the second attempt, so that's the one they count, and that gave him 81 points for that event. The next event that the Sergeant Major of the Army would have done was the hand release push-ups. That's different than the old one was. You have to kind of start from the down position, go all the way up, and then go back down, and then raise your hands up off the ground to count for 1, basically. Actually, I think returning back to the front leaning rest actually is what counts as 1. So he had 2 minutes to do this in, and he was able to complete 45 of these push-ups. So like I said, just make sure to be aware this is a different style push-up. It's not like the old school one where people were able to knock out like 100 push-ups if you're in really great shape, or I think the passing was like 42 or something like that. So this does take a little bit more time, a little bit more effort. So make sure that you're aware that it is that hand release push-up, and he did 45, which was a score of 85 points. Next is the sprint drag carry that he would have had to complete it. This is where you have to go back and forth, pulling some sleds, moving some weights and sprinting and all sorts of other stuff. So this is for time, and he was able to complete the exercise in 1 minute and 43 seconds, and that gave him a score of a 96 in this event. So still looking pretty darn good for the Sergeant Major of the Army. Now the next 2 events is where he really shines, and the next event for the Sergeant Major of the Army that he did was the leg tuck. This is the one that a lot of people I've been hearing have been struggling with, because by the time you get to it, you've done so many other events that you're sometimes smoked or pretty tired, or maybe you burnt yourself out on some of the other events, and it's a little bit difficult to kind of do this because you have to kind of pull yourself up and kind of do like a pull-up in a way. Even saw like in an article with the Sergeant Major talking about his results, he's even said that it was fairly difficult, but he did really well in this event. So for the leg tuck event, the Sergeant Major of the Army was able to do 20, which is actually 100 points. That is the max for that event. So he was able to max this event. So the 6th and final event on the ACFT that the Sergeant Major of the Army completed was the 2-mile run, and he was able to run this sucker in 13 minutes and 20 seconds, which is also a score of a 100. So he was able to max 2 of these 6 events, his lowest score being that power throw, which was a score of 81. So the overall score the Sergeant Major of the Army was able to get was a 552. So he was really only 48 points away from maxing the ACFT, and so far as of recording this video, there's only been 2 individuals in the United States Army that has been able to max the ACFT, one being an officer, and recently there was a specialist that was able to max it. So I feel that was pretty good. Even in the article, the Sergeant Major had talked about how, like a year ago or something, he was, really struggling at the actual first event, which was the maximum or the repetition maximum deadlift. So he was having a really hard time with that event. But he said through repetition and practice, he was able to get to where he got to now, which was pretty good. I think he said he struggled to be able to do like 200 pounds. I forget what the exact amount was, but he said he made a drastic improvement by just simply practicing. And so that's what he encourages soldiers to be able to do, is practice these events, start lifting weights and everything. So also let's kind of dive into their scorecard, because there's some things maybe we should point out inside of here. First one being that the grader, which was a Major Flores, marked the Sergeant Major of the Army as a female. Now I can kind of see how that kind of mistake was kind of made. There's a line right next to male, and that's actually the line for female, so I have it up on the screen, but I can kind of see how you can kind of make that mistake by accident. But kind of funny that this goes out on Twitter and you kind of see that this grader marked the Sergeant Major of the Army as female. Maybe that's why it's just kind of like a small mark, is because maybe he marked it and then kind of realized what he did and just get, oh crap, I'll just leave it, I guess. The other thing to note is at the very bottom of the ACFT score sheet, which shows the start time of 05:58 and then an end time of 7:20. So that means the event altogether took roughly an hour and 20 minutes, which is a little bit longer than I know the original video that the Army put out, kind of telling people how long it was going to take. I remember people were first seeing all these events and what has to go into it, and they were like, oh, this is going to take hours and hours and hours and everything. And then the Army put out that video that kind of explained the ACFT, saying that the whole entire event should take about 50 minutes or less, which in this case, I'm assuming that didn't go that way. It took about an hour and 20 minutes. And I'm assuming the Sergeant Major of the Army wasn't the only one taking this ACFT. He was probably doing it with a bunch of other soldiers and everything like that. So I don't believe that this was just simply just his dedicated ACFT. He probably just kind of fell in with a unit and wanted to take it with them, or whatever the situation was. So as a whole, this entire event took about an hour and 20 minutes, which is a little bit longer than the Army originally said that it was going to take. So there you go. Those are the results from the very most senior individual in the United States Army on the enlisted side, the Sergeant Major of the Army. Scored quite well, did quite well for the age of 51 especially. Again, he has the same standards as someone who's 21 in, the same type of unit, whether it's an infantry unit or whatever standards they're going off of, either MWES or unit. I still haven't seen that exactly, but that standard is the same across the board, male, female, regardless of age. So he's 51 and was able to score quite well for 51. With the old PT test, you relaxed a little bit. The older you got, you had a little bit lower standards to complete, and the standards would kind of fluctuate a little bit as far as maxing it. Sometimes they would go a little higher in certain ages, but now with this one, it's one set standard, regardless of your age, regardless of your gender. So I feel like you crushed it. What do you guys think? Leave comments down below of how you think he did. What do you think you could do? If you're someone who have already taken the ACFT, I'd love to hear maybe how well you've done or how poor you've done, whichever. I'm not going to judge. I mean, there's probably going to be people in the comments that probably will, but not a big deal if you want to leave your score down there if you have already taken it and someone who's already in the military. Otherwise, if you haven't taken it, maybe you're not even in the military or whatever, what do you think the hardest event for you would possibly be? I'd love to hear about that in the comments as well. All right, guys, well, seeing how amazing this 51-year-old Sergeant Major of the Army did on this physical fitness test on the ACFT kind of makes me think that I'm in really bad shape, so I better start knocking out some push-ups or something. I don't know. Thanks for watching. I'm ChrisChaos. I'll see you next time. See ya.